We got a brilliant question in from two of our ACP students. Delet and April, thank you very much for the question. The question is there a table with the 5 Scrum events that breaks it down at a high level so that we can see everything all in one place? So I worked on creating this for your consumption. Let's go to the very first one. It's the sprint. The sprint is 1 month or less. It's a container for all other Scrum events where the work to achieve the product goal is done. The Scrum team is responsible and accountable for this. Developers, the Scrum Master, and the product owner must attend. So when we talk about team autonomy and we talk about the team taking responsibility and accountability, this is a great example, right? The sprint is not just one person's affair, it's everyone. Secondly, we have sprint planning. Sprint planning, think about it. If you're working on a 1 month sprint, then the maximum is 8 hours, which is 2 hours for every week in the sprint. So if you're working for 2 weeks, a 2-week sprint, then you would expect around the region of 4 hours. And not to be prescriptive, but this just gives you some guidelines, right? The purpose of sprint planning is it is an event to lay out the work to be performed during the sprint, resulting in the sprint backlog. Responsible and accountable, we have the developers with the input from the product owner. The Scrum team is expected to attend. Remember that here, if the Scrum Master is not doubling as a developer, they don't really participate in the actual, whether it's planning, POCA, or the estimating. They have to be a developer to do that, so keep that in mind. The next event is a daily Scrum. It's 15 minutes. That's a time box. It's a daily meeting. It's a sync-up meeting, a planning meeting. Do not call it a status meeting. That will be an automatic wrong on a lot of the exams from PMI. So daily meeting for the developers to inspect progress towards the sprint goal and adjust the sprint backlog accordingly. Responsible and accountable, the developers. The developers must be in attendance. We do not recommend skipping this. So who must attend? The developers must attend, the product owner and Scrum Master if they are doubling as developers. So if they were involved in some of those items in the sprint backlog and they're doubling as developers, then of course we expect them to be. What the Scrum Master needs to do is make sure that the event does hold, but as far as being there, no. Now, let's take it to real world. In the real world, you have young teams not having as much direction or understanding regarding the process. So they need more direction at that point from a Scrum Master who can jump in to do more of the event running. But that doesn't mean that the Scrum Master must attend, right? In the grand scheme of things, the Scrum Master can begin to pull away. I'm giving you a real world example now, right? Going over the sprint review. The sprint review is 4 hours for a 1 month sprint. So just think about it. If you're doing a 2-week sprint, then you expect your sprint review to be 2 hours average. If you're doing a 1-week sprint, then expect it to be an hour, right? So it's an hour for a week of sprint. And you can see the same economies of scale in the world of predictive. So in the world of predictive, planning is always longer. Same thing here in the world of Agile. All right. So who is responsible and who is accountable for the sprint review? Well, we've put this squarely on the Scrum team. We, of course, want input from stakeholders, but the general idea is the entire team is accountable for this. Now, when we take a look at the sprint review very closely, this is a great forum for the product owner to step up and invite others who may not be in the loop right now, especially if they are meant to be in the loop as stakeholders. This will be an opportunity for the product owner to ensure whoever needs to be in the room is in the room. And same for all the other team members, right? So who must attend? The Scrum team and stakeholders. You know, when we say Scrum team, we're talking about all three roles, product owner, Scrum Master, and the developers. All right, let's talk about sprint retrospective. Now, the sprint retrospective is 3 hours for a 1 month sprint. We're talking about 45 minutes per week of sprint, if you will. So our goal here is to inspect how the last sprint went and plan ways to increase quality and effectiveness for the next sprint. Responsible and accountable is a Scrum team. Must attend is a Scrum team. I usually advise young teams to begin taking the facilitation duties in turns, right? So it's not going to be Phil next week. It's going to be someone else. And then next week, someone else. And we use this as an opportunity to build and develop synergy. Last but not least, we have the one that is not a mandatory event. But in PMI's book, the Agile Practice Guide, this is front and center, right? It's there. It is something you need to be aware of. So backlog refinement is typically 5 to 10% of the sprint's capacity. The ongoing process is to update the product backlog with detailed estimates and order for future selection. So when we say order, we mean prioritization, which is why the product owner is front and center here. Of course, working with the developers, but the product owner makes that final judgment call as to what is of value that needs to be done now. What is the next thing to do for the upcoming sprint? And that's why the prioritization of value is very important. It's not officially time boxed, but it's recommended to be manageable. Some people set aside a little bit of time every week of the sprint. So setting aside 30 minutes a week is not a bad thing, even less. The bottom line is the product owner needs to be doing this, right? They need to be doing this, even if they're doing it in isolation. For some of the sprints, it's understandable, but it just has to be done, right? So the people who must be in attendance, the product owner and the developers, because the developers are actually doing the work, okay? I hope you found value from this quick run through of the 5 events. When you get newly into Scrum, it's very easy for them all to get muddled and mixed. And I hope this gave you some clarity. Thank you again for the question. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and share. Bye for now.